Hey, this is Zachlog the Great, and I am here tonight with my friend Nate
Once more.
and with author Frank Luke,
Hello.
and he, among other things, is the author of a story in the recent of a story in the the planetary anthology series, book 9, which is Soul, SOL, the sun, not what keeps you alive. Um, and he is the author of one of the stories in that, which is available on Kindle from Amazon. Would you like to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. The that story fits in here tonight because we'll be talking about King Call of Atlantis, and one of the characters in that story, the coward's son, is the last survivor of the sunken island. The story is about a squire who is ready to go on his knighting quest and discovers that he is not the son of the man who raised him. That his real father was drummed out of the military for an act of cowardice, and the son, was handed off so that he not grow up in shame. And now, as he's ready for his knighting quest, he wants to clear his father's name and ride under the correct banner, that of his father's house, and not that of his adoptive father. So this quest, they go back to the place where his father is supposed to have committed the act of cowardice and try to unravel the mystery at the Citadel of Shadows.
Okay. Um, yeah, I usually mention this part first, but a little earlier. We are getting together tonight to talk about a poem by Robert E. Howard. That poem is The King and the Oak, a poem of King Cole, by Robert E. Howard. Frank has kindly volunteered to read that for us. Before we get to that, I did want to mention quickly, if you like my work, if you like the discussion videos, if you like my performance of the various poems or hearing my own political commentary, please consider supporting me via subscribestar.com/zachlog-the-great. And the link is, of course, in the description. Also, one other thing, um, whatever platform you are currently watching this on, there are two others that are available. And so if you're watching this on YouTube, you can find me on BitChute, bitchute.com, and on lbry.tv. You could find me on either of those as well. Just in case, YouTube finally decides to kick me off, and just in case one of the other two goes under, which has happened before. Not those, a different video site. Anyway, so all of the preliminaries out of the way, I will put the poem up on the screen, and we will get this going. Here we go. And you guys let me know when you can see that.
I can see it.
Okay. I'll have to scroll down for the poem itself, but if you want the title there.
Okay. The King and the Oak, a poem of King Cole. Before the shadows slew the sun, the kites were soaring free, and Cole rode down the forest road, his red sword at his knee. And winds were whispering round the world, King Cole rides to the sea. The sun dyed crimson in the sea, the long grey shadows fell. The moon rose like a silver skull that wrought a demon's spell. For in its light great trees stood up like spectres out of hell. In spectral light the trees stood up in human monsters dim. Cole thought each trunk a living shape, each branch a knotted limb. And strange unmortal evil eyes flared horribly at him. The branches writhed like knotted snakes, they beat against the night, and one gray oak was swaying stiff, horrific in his sight. Tore up its roots and blocked his way, grim in the ghostly light. They grappled in the forest way, the king and grisly oak. Its great limbs bent him in their grip, but never a word was spoke, and futile in his iron hand a stabbing dagger broke. And through the monstrous tossing trees there sang a dim refrain, fraught deep with twice a million years of evil, hate, and pain. We were the lords ere man had come, and shall be lords again. Called since an empire strange and old that bowed to man's advance, as kingdoms of the grass blades before the marching ants. And horror gripped him in the dawn like someone in a trance. He strove with bloody hands against a still and silent tree. As from a nightmare dream he woke, a wind blew toward the lee, and call of high Atlantis rode silent to the sea.
Okay. Thank you. So, my first comment on this one, and I have to kind of give an introduction for people who are not, are not, I guess you could say, scholars of pulp fiction. King Kull of Atlantis is a character created by Robert E. Howard, most famously the creator of Conan the Barbarian. And I am quite sure there are some Howard fans who will be mad at me for putting it this way, but I don't think it would be. I think it's pretty accurate to say King Kull is basically Conan the Barbarian version 1. The two characters are in rough outlines very similar. They're not the same. And in fact, the first Conan story was Howard reworking a King Kull story that didn't end up selling. And he came up with a new character and changed other elements of the story. But yes, King Kull is a barbarian from a what would you say, from a savage land, ends up being king of ends up fighting and winning his way through it to be king of a great empire. Broad outlines very similar to Conan the Barbarian. So that's my first little introductory note on this one. Nate, how about what did you think of this one?
It was quite introspective. I enjoyed it. It speaks to, the might of time, and that time is the great conqueror, and it will eventually overthrow all kingdoms, all kings. It can break any sword, it can penetrate any armor. And so those who share the depth of time, more than we do, tend to be stronger than we are, like this oak. But even they eventually are going down, and time will claim them too. And it was just sort of like, just the sort of symbolic, futile striving against this massive tree. Because it's like in that one weird night, it reminded him that, there's an enemy coming for you there's insuperable. And so, he just lashes out at the nearest thing and just finds himself, in the morning, like, what am I doing? And then rides silently to the sea. And it feels like a death ride at that point. Like, he's going to just basically go back down to Atlantis and never rise again.
It's there's definitely some ambiguity in this poem, because, and I don't know how much this was intended, but it's was there actually a animate tree, that tree monster that Kull was fighting with, or was this all some kind of dream? And I don't think it's entirely clear either way. It could definitely, the ending stanza, you could definitely read that as, you know, this was all some kind of dream or delusion, a nightmare he was having. I think there is enough there that you could also say, no, he was actually in a real fight for his life. So I don't.
No, I'm saying I don't think he was in a fight for his life. I think that, you know, he's in this weird night and this giant tree just looms out of the fog, you know, and he's like, ah. And so he just goes, you know, barbarian mode and attacks it. And he's like, oh, you want to fight me? You know, you stand against me? Okay. And so he's going to go at it, but he's actually just trying to push over an oak tree all night. But like,
How
he
drunk
doesn't.
was he before this happened? That's the question.
Well, no, and that's the thing. It's like, you know, he was probably pondering, in my mind anyway, I feel like he's pondering his advancing age and, you know, all these things as he's on this, apparently just this, you know, this random ride to the sea, but that is so remarkable. It's like, why did the winds whisper this? Is Cole going back? I mean, he was a pirate, you know, a Corsair captain. So is, you know, is it that? Is he going to go do that again? Or is, you know, his sunken home calling to him and he's going to, you know, just do the beaches of Cheyenne, walk into the sea and never come back? You know, and so, no, I think he actually fought a tree all night in a wrestling match because, I mean, he's grappling it with bleeding hands. He breaks a dagger against it. This is all very physical stuff, and it doesn't sound dreamlike to me. The opening sounds dreamlike, but the whole contest with the tree really sounds like a thing that he actually did. And then, like, was just in it, you know. But when the sun started coming up, you know, it's like it sort of cleared away the fog in his mind, and he was like, "What am I doing?"
Yeah, I agree, Nate. That I definitely think that he was wrestling the tree. I spent most of my time in the rereads of this trying to figure out if the tree was like a predecessor of an ent, if he was a, you know, awakened tree that he was
Was the
fighting
tree
against, or if it
fighting
was
back
just
is the question.
yes, exactly.
And I'm, you know, possibly because, you know, I'm just a fan of, you know, science fiction and fantasy. I tend to take things like this at face value, and, like, you know, it says he's in a fight with a tree, and, you know, the thing is trying to strangle. Is that part of it? Let me see. They grappled. Okay, yeah, they grappled. It bent, the tree bent him in its grip. Grizzly, by the way, if anyone did not know, grizzly is definitely a favorite word of Robert E. Howard's. That one shows up quite a bit in his stories. Anyway, but yeah, and so I'm definitely more on the side that this is a an angry ent that he's fighting with, and the fact that he came out alive after that, that's kind of that's kind of impressive in itself, even if he didn't win.
I guess one of the things that well, maybe I should let Frank talk. I don't know. I have more things to say, but we'll get to it.
Go ahead.
Yeah,
because he hasn't gotten to give his whole take yet. So let's.
It struck me. I did conclude that he, like Zach Log, that he was having a real fight, and I did conclude that the tree was awake in the night. And the one of the lines that struck me the most was, "We were the lords, our man had come, and shall be lords again." That Howard had a very romantic view of barbarians, and that civilizations would come and go, and actually civilization was not the pinnacle of man's existence, but was just a brief respite until they fell back to barbarians. He enjoyed the barbarian side more than he did civilization, and And the king of the trees is saying here, we're going to live. We're going to make it past you. And in this, I'm not sure what part of Cull's reign this takes place in, but Cull over the stories has a very time when he realizes that being king is not what he thought it would be.
I like to imagine this as like an aging Cull that is like, he's had to fight down these challenges against him, and he's won and re-won his throne, but yeah, he's like, is this all kingship is?
Yeah, there's definitely parts of that in the stories, and that's both with Cull and Conan. One thing I think a good glimpse into Howard's attitude towards barbarians and barbarism and civilization is in this quote, and this is from a Conan story, although the source I have here does not show which one. I might see if I can find it. Civilized men are more discourteous than savages, because they know they can be impolite without having their skulls split, as a general thing. And I think that says quite a bit about Howard's attitudes towards civilization and barbarism, and also probably a lot.
That's to imply that all violence is barbarism, and honestly, I don't believe that's the case. I think that fighting words are a thing and should remain. There are some things that if you say them, you should say them knowing that the reply might be knuckles.
I also think that has something to say about how we tend to interact online. And I am
very civilized interaction online.
I am guilty of this myself, so this is not pointing the finger at other people. This is I'm included on this one, but yeah, it's you definitely say things that you wouldn't generally say to someone's face. But what was there's one thing I found kind of interesting about this poem. At least, okay, if you take Cole's side in this, if you consider him, kind of the good guy, or the protagonist, the one you're supposed to sympathize with, one thing I find kind of fascinating about this poem is like you see a lot of you see stories and it's a kind of theme in art, man versus nature. You don't tend to see a lot where nature is pretty obviously the villain in the story, or at least you don't see that these days. And I will say, it wasn't that far back, but it was far back enough that Robert E. Howard probably knew this better than most of us today. And I think there's some of that in this poem. Like, if take away all of the extra goodies we have, and send a human being out into the wilderness, alone. Nature wants to kill you. And that's definitely, and living in harmony with nature. No, there's a reason we have structured things around us that raw nature is not something we deal with very often, because nature wants to kill you.
Actually,
and
nature doesn't want to kill you. I disagree with that. It's just that nature doesn't give two craps if you die.
Yes.
Nature is not cruel, and nature is not nurturing. Nature doesn't care. Nature's a drunk stepmom on the couch letting you do whatever you want, and you're going to deal with the consequences.
Mother Earth as a drunk stepmom.
Yes, drunk stepmother nature.
How dare you? Can I get Greta
Shut up, Greta.
Thunberg in here?
Yes. Something I heard once, how can you tell that humans are above animals? Well, we have discussions such as how should we treat animals? Well, we should treat them humanely. Animals sit around in the forest swapping recipes.
Hey, I've sat around in the forest swapping recipes with other humans, so I feel attacked.
So one interesting thing, and I forget which of you brought this up, but the idea of these trees, there's this thing that's been around so much longer than us. That actually reminds me of I need to read some of the others, but I've read one book by Nicholas Nassim Taleb. I'm probably mangling his name anyway, but I read Skin in the Game, which I recommend. I definitely recommend, and it's one thing he talks about there is what he calls the Lindy effect, which is basically that for something that doesn't have a built-in expiration date, like a human being, like an individual human, it's a good general rule that the longer something has been around, the longer it's likely to continue being around. That if something that has existed for a couple hundred years probably is going to keep existing, is more likely to keep existing for another couple hundred years than something that just got started last week. Something that just got started last week, there's much higher odds that next year it's going to be gone. And so this empire of the trees, and they've been around longer than us, and this somewhat depends upon your eschatology, but it is possible that they may be around after us. I don't know. Like I said, that somewhat depends upon your eschatology. Vocabulary lesson for the day for the non-theologians. Eschatology is basically how you think the world is going to end. Short definition.
Yes, it is your study of the end times as they relate to the divine schedule. What interests me about this poem is how just unpleasant all of it is. It's
not nice. Yeah.
No, it's like, okay, I get it. You have this sort of like brutal style that Robert E. Howard tends to like, from what I've seen, what we've read of him anyway. Like I said, it's just like, you're talking about a barbarian king and he's a man of blood and iron, and okay, great. But for God's sake, I mean, I'm sitting here the whole time I'm reading it, I'm imagining the counterpose where it's like, an Arthurian king, he would be riding toward the sacred shores of England or something, he's in some mysterious Welsh forest or someplace, beautiful silver moonlight, is, illuminating mists with, riddles and, mysteries. And he comes upon this this mighty tree half fallen in the way. And he's like, do I try and ride around this, or do I draw my sword and cut through? What lesson do I take from this mighty father of the forest, being brought so near to low, but still sprouting, as time crushes us all, and I can persevere in strength even throughout until my final end comes, or, do I curse it as an impediment and slice my way through? What's the proper way to go about it? And it would leave him sitting in the road being like, I must ponder these weighty questions of philosophy. Instead, it's like, the sun cast a demon, the moon cast a demon spell, and horrible monsters glared at him from the night, and their eyes flamed horribly. And he wrestled the tree, and he tried to stab the crap out of it, and his dagger broke. So now not only is he riding toward the sea all, morose and gloomy, but now he ain't even got a knife. I'm like, jeez, calm down.
I'm gonna give you a couple lines to for that theme. It starts off with before the shadows slew the sun. So the shadows are killing the sun. The kites, which is vultures, were soaring free. The sun died crimson in the sea. The moon was like a silver skull, and was being used for a demon spell. So yeah, there's
I was like, Cole is not a happy man.
No.
I'm like, poor guy. Jeez, that sucks. I don't. It's like honestly, I just end up feeling bad for him. It's like, ugh. I'm riding alone in the grimdark. Everything is terrible. What is that, a tree? Screw you, tree! Ah!
So you're saying Cole belongs in late '90s comics?
Yes, Cole is a Dark Ages of Comics character. 100%. I wonder how many belts he was wearing. And some random pouches.
No Rob Liefeld. No Rob Liefeld.
Liefeld pouches. If you have not seen Rob Liefeld pouch, like the Liefeld pouch, Google that. You're gonna laugh. Also, Google why can't Rob Liefeld draw? Because
I have looked at that.
There is actually, I'm not sure if I could find it, but there's actually a whole website devoted to I've seen devoted to like Rob Liefeld's worst drawing errors.
Oh yeah. The man committed crimes against the human form. It's like Rob Liefeld, no anatomy books. You should talk to the guy who wrote frickin' Eye of Argon and just get an idea of what some body parts are.
Does this Jim Theis? Yeah, that's it. But yeah, does this woman have a spine? How is she? I don't understand.
Yeah, I mean, take the rat anatomy and make it sort of like more humanoid. You've got it. You know, he grabbed it by the crown of the skull and pulled it, and then the cervical vertebrae popped out, and then the thoracic vertebrae popped out, and the scapulae detached from the clavicles. And I was like,
are you familiar with the Eye of Argon, Frank?
I'm like, so wait, actually, hang on a minute.
I'm not familiar with that one.
Oh gosh.
Okay.
Okay. So
we mention it semi-regularly on our discussions.
Okay. So yes, I'm gonna try and get us back on topic in a minute. But the Eye of Argon is an infamously bad fantasy story. That was like I think when the guy wrote it, he was like 16. And it's follows the adventures of Grignr. Is there an E? Okay, no. Anyway, Grigner, who knows? It doesn't look anyway. But yeah, a barbarian. It's one description was it. I remember. It appears to have been written by someone who has 3 thesauruses and no dictionary.
Oh,
it's really good.
It's so okay. So and in old science fiction conventions, like probably 70s, 80s, there was a game where they would take a copy of this and they would pass it around, and you would read it aloud with all the verve you could put into it, and whoever could get the farthest without bursting out laughing was the winner. It's impressive.
I was doing so well. I had gone through like 5 or 6 paragraphs, and he meets this noble, and then the guy, he starts. I don't even remember what the thing was, but he's described as being a big fat dude, fat, soft, and corrupt. And I was like, all right. I was like, this is all pretty funny. And then it says the guy, like, he's having a dialogue with Griner, and it says the guy does something, and he's like just undulating fatly. And I was like, oh,
it's God. Yeah, you it's definitely worth looking up. Anyway,
all right.
Let me see if I can get us back on topic.
Even Griner's Dark Ages of Comics sort of aesthetic is less, like I said, less grimdark than this. I'm like I said, Cole Rides in Grim Darkness is a good title for this.
I also think, and this is a little like one of the Solomon Kane poems we did,
Mm-hmm.
The Return of Sir Richard Grenville. This kind of feels like a D&D random encounter.
Yeah.
Does,
What did he roll to get this?
He rolled up. Okay, you got a tree monster. Yeah. Immune to normal weapon damage. Your dagger snaps off when you try and stab it. You have is wrestling. Your barehanded wrestling. What's your stats there?
Make a grapple check against the tree. No, you fail. And what's your Constitution modifier? No, I fail. Roll your grapple check. No, you fail.
Oh, get the grapple addendum.
Do this for get the grapple addendum. It's like six or seven more rounds of other stuff. And the DM gets tired of it. He's like, the sun comes up and you realize it was all a mirage. That's just a tree. Your horse thinks you're an idiot. Hang on a minute. Roll charisma so your horse doesn't just kick you in the face and walk off in shame.
Yeah, it's but yeah, like I said, it's very much a it definitely feels like a D&D random encounter because it's not there's not much in the way of narrative arc here. There's atmosphere and there's a little bit of not exactly moral, a little bit of philosophical outlook on man's future, but not much in the way of narrative arc.
Yeah.
On the other hand, I mean, I definitely have to give credit. I believe, Robert E. Howard died at age 30. I don't think there's anything I wrote by age 30 that was probably this good. So I got to give him credit there. I can't. This is not intended as a mockery or disparagement.
I mean, the man. I was looking up some stuff this week, and he either invented sword and sorcery or was the second person to write sword and sorcery. One person that I found said that Lord Dunsany had the first sword and sorcery story. I was not familiar with that. I knew him from his fantasy, but not anything like on the level of sword and sorcery.
Yeah, and he basically barbarian is a Jeffro would surely tell us in detail. Barbarian is a D&D class because of Robert E. Howard.
I don't doubt it.
And so and all of the other characters of roughly similar nature that have come down since then are following in Conan's footsteps, and although most of them don't know it, following in Cole's footsteps. But let me see.
I do have to admit, part of me was hoping that he would manage to rip the tree out of the ground and suplex the crap out of it and be like, "I'll conquer time too." But it didn't happen.
Well, it's a Cull. If you read the original stories, which are fun. He has a mixed track record. He doesn't always win. In fact, he's actually in some respects kind of gullible a lot of the times. He tends to fall at you're reading a Cull story and short story and there's a lot of them where you're just sitting there Admiral Akbaring the entire time.
We do live and die by Akbar's maxim.
Yeah. Oh wow! Look at that. The Howard is mentioning that the curtains are fluttering just a bit. There's probably an assassin behind them waiting to kill Cull. And there was.
But
So that's a good trope then, is the Howard curtain.
Yeah.
It's like Chekhov's gun, but for assassins.
Yep. Yeah, that was in by this axe I rule, and as soon as he started mentioning the curtain was shaking a little bit, I'm like, maybe we should look down and see if there's toes sticking out from underneath it.
just make sure you're not doing a Hamlet there and killing
No,
your.
I'm thinking he should definitely do a Hamlet there and kill whoever's in that curtain, because they don't mean you well. Like curtain shaking, slashed it in half with his freaking axe, and it's like, oh look, some legs fell out, and the rest of the guy fell out. I don't know him.
As long as it's not the guy you wanted to be your father-in-law, was what I was trying to get to.
Well, I mean, yeah, but in the end, that wasn't going to work out because, Ophelia went down to the water. Ophelia rode to the sea, or at least the creek outside the castle.
Yeah.
She didn't stop by any oaks either. She grappled with buoyancy. I'm a bad man. It's been a long week. I didn't honestly, though, the house I was working in for my job, the attic I was up in, we started like marking landmarks by the dead rats. So I'm in the right frame of mind for this poem. Like, I'm crawling around this cramped, dusty, crappy attic, and I'm like, yeah. They're like, yeah, what box do I need to go put the duct on? I'm like, oh yeah, the one over there in the kitchen. You go up the access, kind of past the end of the plenum. You'll pass Delta Romeo 4, and you'll get over to this beam. Delta Romeo 5 will be right there. The box will be just to your left. I'm like, okay. We didn't want to just start talking about dead rats in front of the little old lady that owned the place, because she seemed self-conscious about there being a live cat up there. So yeah, we're just like, yeah, the Delta Romeos. I spent 2 days in the rat grave this week.
Oh.
Like, man, read this poem and was like, yeah. He grappled with a tree and a bunch of dead rats fell out. Overturned an owl's nest or something. I don't know. It sucked.
It's also sorry, going back to the poem. Cole Simpson Empire strange and old that bowed to man's advance, and we were the lords ere man had come, and shall be lords again. And the trees are waiting for their time to come again. And again, if you know the Robert E. Howard mythos, I guess. I don't know. I don't really like that term. Anyway, but the timeline he created,
Hibernian.
Cole is actually quite far back in history, and it's kind of interesting to read this and think about that, and then look at the trees, and they're like, we're still waiting, we're still here, and you aren't going to be all that long, really. It was like, also reminds me of what was the grave insult of building a treehouse. Okay, I'm gonna kill your friend, and then I'm gonna make you hold pieces of him.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, the idea of this massive old oak, the largest living organism on Earth, is a Colorado aspen. Because the way that aspens reproduce is that they spread out their roots, and their roots will actually grow. They'll germinate once they get far enough away, and they'll actually sprout a new trunk and pop up. So when you see a grove of aspen, it's not actually a bunch of trees. It's generally one. It's one actual plant with a bunch. It's essentially like fully developed cypress knees, right? They pop back up, and they're all genetically identical. And so it's really, if you count all the interconnectivity, it's one big tree spread out over a lot of area with, maybe hundreds of trunks. And so, yeah, that's kind of cool to think about too, is that, You think maybe a redwood tree,
I would have thought so,
or some massive thing in the South American jungles, but no, it's Colorado aspen just marching over ground.
So that's an ent you really don't want to get into a fight with.
Yeah. At that point, it's basically a hill titan. Not even an ent anymore.
But yeah, like I said, it is kind of interesting to me in this one to see, and this is I don't know where this is relative to Tolkien's writing and if he would have read any of these, but this is at least contemporary with Tolkien, and seeing basically the ent as the monster that must be conquered, instead of in Tolkien's they're what would they be? They'd kind of be just fighting to preserve their home, in Tolkien's, and it's a little bit to give more modern comparisons, a little bit like what's the Avatar movie, these and a modern civilization encroaching on and tearing up their home, and they're just fighting back and trying to not a fan of James Cameron.
That movie was so stupid.
I actually haven't seen it.
I went to see it because it looked like it might be kind of cool, and honestly, that crazy squiddy jaguar thing was awesome. But I'm looking at it, and I'm like, okay, you have VTOL aircraft, you have bipedal robots. Why in God's name are the canopies made of glass? You know what's not? It's like, what is absolutely arrow-proof? An M1 Abrams tank. Just space drop a few of those down there. That Jaguar comes at it. Yep, there we go. We slapped a heat round into his torso, and he sort of turned into bacon. It was fantastic. The big blue chick fired arrows at our tank, and they went and turned into splinters. And then we pumped a heat round into her too, and well, that was interesting. Oh, what is that? A tree? We're done. Let's go home.
That actually reminds me of what was crud, the tank. Oh yeah, in I think it was in one of the Star Trek: The Next Generation movies, like they were in some kind of battle or something, and they crashed into something, and the view screen at the front just broke through, and with whatever was hitting them, and I'm like, wait, that's actually a window? That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. That shouldn't be a window.
It's not a window.
Yeah, but I swear there was one of them where it was set up so that was actually looking out. It's like, there's no reason to do that with all the technology you have. The bridge should be several layers deep under all your armor and everything. Why would anyway?
Yeah, you're right. I don't recall that one. Most of the Next Generation movies I only watched once. But yeah, if they had the screen is supposed to be just that. It's a screen, and then there's hull behind it. So if it was coming through the screen, that was a major error, which probably happened. Coming through the canopy on the top, I can see that more readily. But even then, putting the bridge right up on top of the saucer with a big round dome is like making a bullseye on your ship. Shoot here for captain.
Well, that's traditional to seafaring, though. When having an elevated bridge, you can see farther, you can command better. And even in the age of gun, gun armed ships, even modern warships, being able to elevate your sensors gives them better range. That all makes sense. In space, though,
Yeah.
why?
Yeah, your sensors are out there anyway. Your bridge
zero
should be.
Yeah, there's no
Don't let it
horizon
expand.
to elevate. Yeah, there's no horizon to elevate over. It's dumb. Anyway, honestly, if this is a living tree, once again, to use our most often used phrase here, to get back to the poem, you really need, Sean, you need to go back through the many, many hours of footage and make a compilation of just every time someone says to get back to the poem.
If I ever start selling T-shirts from this, that will be one of them. To get back to the poem.
Honestly, if this is a living tree, what it reminds me of is not like a tree, like, you know, an ent so much. It reminds me of Maokai from League of Legends. He is literally a tree. He was just a regular tree, but he lived in the stadium where they have all these magical battles, and it's where he was planted. And one day, he had absorbed enough magic that he just came alive. Like, it just suddenly tipped it filled the meter, and he boop, popped out and started wrecking people's domes in just like a blind fury, like, leave my woods alone, and just batting people away left and right. And everybody was like, what the heck is happening? And it took the intervention of a literal angel to stop him from like storming into the crowd that was watching the battle and just murdering everyone. And so, you know, it's like, hey, stop, hold on, look. And they managed, eventually he was like, what? And they're like, hey, look, buddy, what do we even call you? And so they managed to work it out where he has an agenda, and they said they would help him with it if he, you know, served in this magical arena. And so that's what this reminds me of. Just, holy crap, tree fight out of nowhere. Again, the random encounter, but, you know, with the whole, like, the moon is casting spells on you, and there's wickedness afoot. This tree is just like, ah. I said that's what if this tree is a walking tree, this is what he reminds me of more than anything. But again, I'm gonna go right back to my trench and say that no, this is not a living tree. It was a phantasm of Cull's mind. So I was going to poke out of the trench, maybe back to the trench.
Well, the poem is certainly set up to get you in the mood of dark and scary right from the beginning. To get you in that magical mood.
Yeah, it's give me a second. Robert E. Howard, like, you know, definitely was, you know, good at you know, writing short stories. But he also, you know, clearly knew how to, you know, be more economical and direct and create an atmosphere, with much fewer words to work with. And so, yeah, like, because, you know, the poem is, you know, 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21. The poem is 24 lines long, you know, a couple hundred words, and, you know, he establishes an atmosphere, you know, from the very first, you know, 6 words, before the shadows slew the sun. So, you know, that is definitely to his credit in that aspect. Well, so I think I've said most of the things I wanted to cover about this one. Nate, did you have any other things you wanted to get in here?
No, I believe I've talked about, you know, time's ultimate conqueringness and, you know, grim darkness in this poem. So, yeah, no, I'm good. Florida, what you got?
Frank, go ahead. FL. That was, I think, the FL.
Oh.
Yeah, sorry. I've been wanting to do this time.
Okay, that had thrown me for a minute. Yeah, I think we haven't talked about Howard's views of Atlantis, and I was wondering, how much of Atlantis did he believe, and how much did he just say, this would make a great setting for a story in the distant past?
Well, that's well, because I was actually just skimming through, the background of Kull, and like Atlantis was the barbarian, like by his time Atlantis was the barbarian land that he left and eventually conquered his way to the fought his way to the top of a civilized empire. um and so that wasn't well. And then the question, let me see, did Atlantis die in his time?
In Kull's time?
Yeah. Jeez, I haven't studied because in basically the first, if I understand correctly, our first reference to Atlantis is what's his is Plato, talking
Hmm.
about this kind of arrogant kingdom that went beyond their went that went beyond their rightful place and were cast down by the gods.
Right.
Um,
And Athens drove them back at one point, according to
and so
Plato.
that's not the kind of people that Howard is describing here. Whether I guess it's possible that's in their future, is another possibility. Um, that's in their future at the time of Kull's stories. Um,
There was a huge revival in Atlantis literature sometime around the 1880s through um, past the time of Howard. A whole lot of scientific research. Did this actually exist? And then the pseudoscience and the theosoph the what was called divine wisdom, that Atlantis was the spiritual father of um, of all the world, and all the great philosophies could be traced to it.
it's that's always okay. From what I understand of the story, that's always puzzled me a little bit because, like, it seemed from what I understand of the context, it seemed pretty clear that like Plato was basically just using this as a parable,
Hmm.
and then like
Yeah, this is
it'd be
allegory.
like trying to figure out who was the rich man in Jesus' story who gave 10 talents to one man, 5 talents to another, and 2 talents to a third. It's like, no, there's not an actual person there. That's not the point.
Well, what I love is apparently they have all these philosophers and they still, died of their own hubris. That just goes to show that maybe these barbarians are right and philosophy is useless. But I'm like, but honestly, all these people that are doing that, this is like Ensign Chekhov saying that everything's better in the original Russian. Yeah, all these philosophies are better in their original Atlantean. I'm sure they had it in a more pithy style. I'm like,
Okay. Well, I think we've covered this one pretty well for tonight. So thank you both for joining me. It's been an interesting conversation, and God be with you.
Also with you.
Thank you, Zach Log.